everyone, it's Monica. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be bringing you another peaceful parenting video, and by popular request I'm going to be talking all about timeouts and time-ins. I'm going to be giving you the research on why timeouts aren't doing probably what you think that they're doing and may actually be causing more misbehavior and more problems in the end. Then we're going to be getting into what actually a time-in is and why it has better results. If you're new to my channel, I post videos on peaceful parenting, healthy living, and life with little ones, and would love for you to consider subscribing. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss any helpful videos. And if you like this type of video and you find it helpful, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. I hope to help you navigate this very important work of parenting peacefully and with love so we can help raise our little ones to be the positive change the world needs. First, I want to talk about timeouts. So most people think that timeouts are a good thing and a positive, peaceful alternative to spanking. And while timeouts are definitely much better than hitting a child, they still are a form of punishment with unintended negative consequences. And they damage the one thing that actually motivates our kids to want to cooperate with us, and that is the relationship. Interestingly enough, there's actually no evidence that supports giving a child a timeout will actually improve behavior in the long term. A study by the National Institute of Mental Health actually found that timeouts are only effective in the short term, and in the study, the kids that were given timeouts actually showed more misbehavior over time than the children who weren't punished at all. And this is even with a kind intent, and when you're talking to the children afterwards, the ones that weren't punished actually had the better outcome. The researchers in this study actually contributed this to a phenomenon called love withdrawal. This is a feeling children get when they're punished or isolated. They begin to feel love is conditional based upon their behavior, even when this obviously isn't the intent of the parent. Children have a primal, innate need to feel connected to their parents and to feel safe. When they don't feel safe and the connection is weak, they act out. So when they have this feeling of love withdrawal from isolation or punishment, researchers find that they have more misbehavior, worse emotional health, and less developed morality. When techniques like isolation or timeout and punishment are used, you may see a temporary change in behavior in that moment due to fear and this need to be connected to the parent. But what's happening underneath that is actually a breaking of that connection that we have with our children, which actually gives us less influence in the future. Imagine for a second that you're fighting with your spouse and your husband or your wife puts you into timeout to punish you. So that would likely make you pretty angry, and anger would obviously lead to resentment. This action wouldn't bring you closer or build trust between the two of you. Well, the same thing goes for our kiddos. They will equally feel that anger, which in turn results in resentment, which leads to more misbehavior in the future. For more information on the negative effects of punishment in a more general sense, be sure to check out my video, The Pitfalls of Punishment, where I go in depth on that specific subject, which I will link in the description below, along with any other video I might reference in this video. I'm going to break down the problems with timeout in 5 points. The first being it triggers that feeling of abandonment, which if done repeatedly over time can actually change the structure of a child's brain. And some children might even begin to see themselves as bad. If you tell a child over and over that they're bad, or that they're naughty, or that they don't listen, eventually they're going to start to believe this. We're giving our children their internal voice. So if that voice is a negative one, because that's what we've given them, that's what they're going to start to believe and internalize. And that's the opposite of what we want. We want our children to love themselves and see themselves as we see them, hopefully, which is in a positive light. Number 2, it doesn't teach emotional regulation, which, as we know now, is hyper-emphasized in schools, and people are beginning to see the importance of emotional regulation and emotional intelligence over that of academic intelligence, and the implications of having emotional intelligence and being able to regulate themselves and their emotions in adulthood. Number 3, it sets you up for power struggles with your child, which is never good for their emotional development. Number 4, it keeps you and your child on a separate team, where we should be working as partners, and if we're not, then we're weakening again that bond, the thing that actually makes them want to cooperate. Number 5, so this one's a really big one. This, again, has to do with emotional regulation and emotional intelligence. People are emotional. They have big feelings, they get mad, they get sad, they get confused, frustrated, angry, all of it. And it's all normal and it's all a part of being a human. Kids who are sent away from their parents when they're having these big feelings will eventually learn to hide them. They'll think they're bad and they'll want to suppress them. The thing is, they're not bad, and kids need to learn how to identify them, how to understand them, and how to express them in an appropriate way. If we're only telling them to stop crying or to not be mad or not be sad or not feel their feelings, those feelings don't go away. They're still going to be in there. They're just going to get stuffed down, and they're not going to learn how to deal with them in appropriate ways. And then when they get really upset and they haven't learned how to manage any of that, they're going to come spilling out in some pretty nasty ways. I'm sure you've noticed many adults around you, or maybe even yourself, having to deal with this reality. So I say let's try to stop that cycle and give our kids the tools they need to be better. So Monica, what do I do if I can't spank, if I can't punish, if I can't do timeouts? What do I do? So I can totally understand this, which is why I went on this deep dive into this journey of peaceful parenting, because there are options that actually work. Scientifically backed options that are beneficial. And for the sake of this video, we're going to be focusing on a tool called Time In that we can use as parents. Time In is not punishment, and it should never feel like punishment. And if we're feeling angry or when we're using it, the kid feels punished, then we're not using this tool to its fullest potential. Time In is a time to help teach emotional regulation. It's a time to connect with our kids, to help them recognize mistakes, learn problem-solving techniques, and to make repairs for wrongdoing. We're basically holding space for our children to feel all of their emotions with an unconditionally loving parent in safety. I want to be clear that this is not permissive parenting. We're still firmly holding those boundaries and limitations, but we're doing with empathy, and we're still teaching. For example, they're really upset because they wanted to have another whatever treat it is, something that they wanted, and they're having all these emotions. You let them have the emotions. That doesn't mean that you give them the cookie or the rice cake or whatever it is they're asking for. You say, you really wanted that treat, or you really wanted that toy that your friend has, and you're upset that you can't have it. So we're not going to give in to the reasonable limit that we've set, but we're going to understand that they're going to have a feeling about that. They're going to have an emotion about that, and we're there to help and support them through that emotion. Tell them it's okay to be mad, sad, or frustrated, or any of their feelings that are coming up. I remind myself that in our home, all feelings are allowed, but it's the negative behavior that isn't allowed, and it's our job to help them figure out what to do with those emotions and what the appropriate behavior is. And we always want to keep in mind their development and the limitations of self-control that comes with age, as well as their inability to think really clearly when faced with extreme upset. It's hard enough for us adults to be able to emotionally regulate when we are in a heightened emotional state or have an extreme level of upset. And the brain wiring for our young children just simply isn't there to do it. The part of our brain that's responsible for this ability, the prefrontal cortex, is a construction zone before age 6 and isn't fully developed until around age 25. I think for me, perspective sharing and remembering these things makes it immensely easier to have the patience to practice this form of parenting, because it does take a very high level of patience. But when I think about the science of it, and when I think about development and how children learn and how they grow, it makes it a lot easier to not be so judgmental in these situations. Compassion and empathy are going to go a very long way in helping us to stay connected and to understand our kids. So Dr. Laura Markham has some great insights into time-ins and timeouts and everything that I'm talking about now, and I would highly recommend her book, Peaceful Parents, Happy Kids, as well as poking around on her website, ahaparenting.com. So much great information to find there. Now I'm going to share with you a few tips on time-ins that I picked up from her. So the number one and most important thing for us to do when we're offering our child a time-in due to behavior or whatever it is that warrants the time-in, it's for us ourselves to stay regulated and calm. We have to manage our own behavior if we're feeling triggered, and we have to be the calm in their storm. I always like that saying, don't join the chaos. If we are joining the chaos and we're getting upset and we're yelling and we're doing all of these things and punishing, we're making the problem bigger. We have to be able to emotionally regulate ourselves. For more on how to do this and to be mindful when we're triggered, check out my video, How to Stop Yelling at Your Kids, and I'll link that in the description below as well. So the second thing to remember is to try to intervene before your kid goes off the deep end or they start that meltdown. When you see them start to get upset or they're starting to lose control, that's the time to start the time in. If they've already gone into full-on meltdown mode, let it happen, support them, give them an appropriate space and place to let all those feelings out. You might need to take them to a separate room or an area that's a little bit more private. And this is a time when they can just move through the feeling, move through that upset. It's not the time to lecture them because nothing is getting in. They're in their fight or flight. They're not functioning on a level that's capable of rational thinking or reasoning. So it's time to just be kind of quiet and offer support. Say, I'm here, I love you, I'm ready to give you a hug when you want one, I know you're really upset. Just do less talking and let them work through it. They need to feel safe in order to be able to move out of that space, to be able to come out of the lizard brain and back into the upstairs brain so that they can actually be capable of rational thought. My video, How to Deal with Tantrums, gets more into this and how to do that if you want to check that out as well. So again, don't give in to whatever's caused the meltdown, but allow space for the feeling that that situation or scenario has caused. So the third thing to keep in mind is to help them to feel safe. They need to move back into the upstairs part of their brain. And if you haven't read Whole Brain Child by Dan Siegel and Tina Bryson, I highly recommend it. It delves into brain development from infancy up through adulthood and how we can best help support our children as they develop so that they can have a well-integrated brain. So the fourth point is to remember the connection is so important. So just think to yourself, connection, connection, connection. Offer them hugs and attention. I know that this is counter to what some people have believed or have been taught, that you don't give attention to a child when they're having a hard time, but that's what they need. They need that attention. We are a social creature. This is how we've developed over eons. Children are usually responding to a need that's unmet. It's not always possible. I understand that. I've got 3 children, so I know not every time somebody's upset can you sit there and do the whole time in thing. And we can't always be like at that optimal level of parenting, but if that's kind of our bar where we're trying to be, then we could at least like fall in the realm of understanding that, you know, when I am able to offer it, then I can. You might say, you really want me to be able to say yes, and you're upset that I'm saying no, and it's really hard for you right now. Or I know it's super hard to wait, or I know you really want that thing, and I'm here to help you through it because I know it's hard. The fifth point is not to lecture. And this is something that I had to kind of learn with my first, and I definitely had too high of expectations of what I thought should play out in these scenarios. Don't expect them to make eye contact or to say back to you exactly how they're feeling or what they need to do different in these moments. So think about how you feel when you're so upset that you can't even think straight and you don't even know what to do. Now think about it from the perspective of a little kid who has an underdeveloped brain and far less tools, and how difficult this task really is going to be for them. The correction and the teaching comes later when they're calm and they're back into their rational brain. The sixth tip, and I kind of touched on this briefly before, but is to have kind of a separate space for them to be able to go through these things. So maybe that's a separate room, or if you're out in public, maybe you go to the bathroom, or maybe you go off to the side at the park, or in your home you can have a calming corner with some books about what to do with your feelings, or calming down, or what to do when you're mad, and I'll link some in the description, which have been very helpful in my home. The seventh point is to try to get them laughing. Laughing can help them release any anxiety, it can help them release that tension, and it can just reset the mood so that they're ready to be, again, in that place of calm where you can talk and reason. So the eighth tip, and this is another great point that Dr. Laura makes, is that if these things aren't working and they're still super upset, they're still throwing stuff and not calming down, they probably have a ton of built up feelings and emotions and anxiety that have just been kind of in there that need to come out, and so it's a good time to let them have a big cry. A lot of parents I know don't like tears, they don't like crying, it makes them uncomfortable. Maybe it wasn't something that they were allowed to do when they were kids, or they were told that that was bad, but it's actually good for them to be able to have that cry and release all of that from their bodies instead of storing it in and holding all this tension and stress. It's appropriate to let them cry with loving support. Again, hold the limit, but allow for those emotions to come out in the safety of our presence. Keep offering compassion, and sometimes that's in the form of a hug, sometimes it's in the form of saying, I love you, I'm here to support you, and sometimes it's just being there and being quiet. If they say they need space and they're very young, say, okay, but I don't want to leave you with all these big feelings, so I'm just going to stand back here, let me know when you're ready to talk or when you're ready for a hug. She recommends not talking a lot or asking a bunch of questions about what's wrong at this point and just letting them work through those emotions. And after they work through the emotions and they have that big cry, they like reset and they want to hug and their moods are better and they just become a new person. And it's just getting all that out. Sometimes they just need to work through it. Sometimes they just need to know that you know what they're going through, and then they're okay. The ninth point is not to punish them for the behavior. So some people say, okay, I'm going to support them through this, and then there's got to be that punishment. There needs to be that consequence. That's actually not necessary. I'm planning to make a video about the difference between natural consequences and punishment. Point being is that the punishment is actually going to set you back, and so it's not necessary. But that does bring us to our 10th point, which is teaching. And a lot of people say, well, they have to have discipline. Discipline, again, is not physical punishment or any form of punishment where you're trying to inflict pain. Discipline is from disciple or a learner. So discipline is to teach, is to guide. So this is the point where you can teach. And a huge benefit of a time in without punishment, without judgment, and just letting emotions be is that they learn that emotions come and go and that they're still loved no matter how big and messy those feelings are. They learn that their mom and dad are on their team, and after they go through this and they're calm, they learn that they can problem solve and they can make repairs for their mistakes. At this point, you can focus on what to do when you're mad or sad or frustrated instead of kicking or throwing something or biting someone or hitting or whatever the behavior is that is inappropriate. This is where we can give them tools that are appropriate. For example, when you're mad, you can do a mad dance, or you can snuggle one of your blankets or your lovey, or you can talk to your mom and dad about it. You can take deep breaths, or with my kids, I have them blow out their birthday candles. So, I'll hold a hand out and just get them to take deep breaths. I say, okay, blow out your birthday candles, and I hold up my hand, or I have them hold up their hand, and they go, and I say, just take a deeper breath so that you can blow it even harder, and then they take a deep breath, and they go, and then I drop the finger and then they blow it out. And so that's like 5 deep breaths, blowing out the birthday candles. And these are just some of the tools that we can give them. There are all sorts of amazing books out there for all ages about how to deal with feelings. If it was an argument that happened between a friend and a sibling, of course the time to talk that out is not when they're at the height of their emotion and when they're super upset. Again, once they're regulated in a calm space, then we can help them talk to that person, or we can give them some ideas of how to approach it. And I think it's important to help them build empathy and to try to help them see the perspective of the other person and try to work to a solution that considers all parties and not just the one, not just them, not just the other person, but where everybody can maybe come to an amicable place with whatever it was that triggered it. When they're little, it might be like, I wanted that doll, and then learning to work through those little scenarios, if they're actually able to work through them with another child, with the support of a parent, with the right tools, is going to give them such an advantage as an adult, because we have conflicts all the time and we have to learn how to manage those and talk to people in a non-violent way. And we can start this when they're little, and the time in is a great place and a great tool to be able to do that. Teaching perspective sharing, I think, is so important, and if more people in the world were able to do this, then we would have a much different world. And I think teaching this to our children at this age is crucial to helping them and just helping society in general to be able to move forward. That's kind of my overview of time out, time in. I really hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone that you feel might benefit from it as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.